Awesome. Well, welcome back to the craft. Today we have Idan Menin. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been following your work on Instagram for a while, in music videos specifically, but then recently a lot of commercial work in some feature stuff. So, could you
Yeah.
give us a little history of kind of your background?
Yeah. How far back do we want to go? I sort of I think like I got into film um as in the same way I think that many of us did, where I came up just obsessed with movies as a kid. I remember going every day. I grew up in New York City, and so every day I'd get off the train from middle school and high school. I would take the train home, and I'd get off at the 71st Avenue station, and there was a Blockbuster right at the exit to the train. And I would just pick up a movie every day on the way home, and then the next day I'd be dropping the one I just watched off and picking up a new one. And so I definitely grew up obsessed watching movies, but I didn't think of it in the context of a job or a career I could pursue until the Lord of the Rings box sets came out. That was like a big defining moment for me. I had read the books as a kid, and so when they adapted them into films and they actually like nailed it, I was enthralled, and I had cracked two ribs and was bedridden for 2 weeks. And I watched the behind the scenes of those movies and the box sets just like front to back the entire time I was just stranded in my room. And it sort of crystallized this idea that this was like a job, and that there were people on set who showed up, and they loaded the cameras and they turned on lights, and it was something that you could actually aspire to. It wasn't just like a pie in the sky kind of thing like movies can sometimes feel like to regular people. So that sort of set me off on the journey of going to film school, and sort of consuming as much as I could through that, and then moving out to Los Angeles and pursuing it as a career. I got my start in the lighting department. When I first moved to LA, I was sort of like interning at a grip and lighting rental house in North Hollywood. And my job was like cleaning stingers and 4-aught and parking trucks. And through that, I got on set and started working as an electrician and then a best boy. And then I gaffed a little bit on, I think it was like 2012 through 2014. There was an era of like branded content was just becoming a thing in our industry. And so I would gaff a lot of these sort of internet um, targeted commercials, which is crazy because now everything's an internet targeted commercial. That's just like the way
Yeah.
commercials are. But at the time, it was novel and it was new, and they sort of let new people in because the old timers just didn't give a shit about it. They just thought it was like beneath them, and so that's how I got into lighting. And I would shoot shorts and whatever passion projects and small music videos uh, in my uh, sort of off time from that. And then um, I did my first film in 2014 as a DP, and it was like just around $1 million budget, which was sort of not usual for the first movie, um, or at least that's what I've been told. And that was a good experience, but like a big learning experience. I think all of us in the project were in over our heads. Um, and then I shortly thereafter did another small movie, and I got to do the micro budget thing, which it's like usually that's first, and then you do something with a little bit more budget. But I did it the opposite way. Um, and and yeah, I just kept kind of working on features and doing small commercials and music videos, and just kind of moving my way forward. You mentioned the music videos, like that's been like a more recent thing, weirdly enough.
Oh,
It's been like the last 2 years that I've kind of fallen into this space, and I've been doing more high profile music videos. I definitely did some when I started, but they were very small. They were like $10,000 budgets where the director and I were more or less serving as producers on it. And so, we would just scrape and beg and borrow and steal and get as much, value out of the bids we were getting. But I only really did that for about a year before I started working in commercials. And I sort of fell into the beauty space, and I did some Estee Lauder campaigns and um, kind of operated in that space. But the goal was always to do features. And so even though I had done two indie movies, I was constantly just looking for more opportunities in that space. And it was, and I did, and I've done a few movies since then. But the the music videos that I'm known for now have only really been in the last 2 years. I sort of kind of came into a really wonderful working relationship with director Andrew Donahoe, and through that have sort of re-entered the music video space on the other side of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that low budget music video space very well. That's where I started out. Like, hey, I got a red one, and we got $1,000. Maybe we can get a couple lights. Maybe we can get a guy this time. You know?
There was a lot
It's
of lighting with park hands at that time. That was like the only thing we could afford, and they're great. They're versatile. They could be hard, they could
uh,
be soft, they're
it's
cheap.
it's a great learning process. Just making music videos and short films with almost nothing. I mean, if you
Hmm.
have that on your toolkit, it's fantastic. It's
Hmm.
by the way, it's funny you mentioned Lord of the Rings as your um, uh, discovery into the movies box set, because almost half of the DPs that we have interviewed, they mentioned that
Oh
box
yeah,
set as
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
that was the one that made me realize
turning
that.
point. I can
Yeah.
do this as a job. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, I mean, it really is like one of the most phenomenal filmmaking documentaries ever made, and like such a testament to, I think, Peter Jackson's love of the process that he made a point to document the entire trilogy so in depthly. Um, I also, yeah, I remember, like I said, I mentioned that Blockbuster. I would go and pick up movies from all the time, and that's also where they sold the box sets, and I had it on pre-order. I was so excited for it, and they were sick of me because I was a kid, so I didn't understand timelines. I didn't understand that because I asked them to pre-order it, they literally couldn't sell it to someone else. But every day when I'm picking up my daily movie, I was like, "Is it in yet? Just make sure you call me. Don't sell it to somebody else." I was just paranoid that because they were limited edition, like, um,
Yeah.
yeah, those
Oh,
box sets
that's
had a real
awesome.
profound impact on me.
So that first feature coming from kind of music video commercial space, when you got that break, what was it? How did that come to be? What was that like stepping into that? The mindset of like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah, it came to be in a weird way. Like, I had been working with a frequent collaborator of mine, producer Shane Spiegel, and we went to film school together, and we were doing a Weird Al Yankovic video, and I wasn't shooting it; I was just an AC on it. But he had mentioned like, oh, I'm producing a feature. It's gonna start prep in like a couple of weeks, maybe a month. You should like interview. I think I could maybe get you to do like second unit or like additional photography on this indie movie. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Um, and so we kept working on set, and then he said, hey, can you meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. with the director? I was like, yeah. You like, sure. You don't want to like have me meet the DP? And he goes, oh no, 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 no. This isn't for second unit. Like you should meet the director and see if you can shoot the whole movie. And I was like, okay. He's like, I'll send you the script. Don't worry about it. It's like 9 p.m. and we're wrapping and putting away cases and stuff. And he goes, don't worry about it. Just read the script tonight and meet him tomorrow. And so and so I went home and like I honestly I don't know how if I slept at all. I just stayed up, I read it, and I was like writing all my thoughts out and just like obsessively preparing. And I had no understanding of what a director DP feature meeting should be. I didn't know anything about building decks. I didn't know anything about sort of like what topics to hit or how to communicate sort of that I was good for the job. But I just put my thoughts together about how I saw the movie, visually and emotionally, and what sort of story points I thought were the most sort of compelling. And we met and we had a good conversation. We got along. I think we had a sort of shared cultural experience because even though he was American, his family was from Europe and he spent a lot of his time in Germany growing up. And so, like, we had that sort of international mindset and connection. And so it was a really good interview. And I went home and Shane called me. He's like, "Oh, he really likes you. So, like, I'll let you know. We still got to talk to a few more people." And then a few weeks went by, and I started to think, like, okay, maybe they went with someone else. And then, he texted me and he said, like, "Oh, sorry, I'm proposing to my girlfriend. So I'm just really busy, like, figuring out the engagement stuff. But don't worry, we'll have an answer soon." But I was still nervous, and so then I responded and I said, like, "Hey, um, no pressure, but if you're still trying to kind of deliberate, I have some film in my fridge, and at the time I owned a BL4. And I said, if you want, we can go out and just shoot tests for your movie, because in our conversation we talked about the film versus digital. That was also like 2014. That was like part of the height of that conversation, I feel. Um, and so I said, let's go out and I'll borrow, a digital camera, and we'll do a comparison thing for your movie. And so that seemed to really like get him excited. And we went out to Yucca Valley and we shot, just him and his brother essentially walking around in the desert on 35 and then on a red Epic. And took it to Photochem and they looked at it and they loved it and they fell in love with the idea of shooting on film. Um, and like, I think 2 days later they called and they offered me the movie.
Wow.
What movie was that? Badland?
No, this one is called A Fortune in Gold.
Okay.
And so ultimately we didn't end up shooting the whole movie on film, but we did do like pieces of it.
Oh, nice.
They sort of only had so much to spend. So it just got relegated to like sort of these weird ethereal sequences where there's a book that the character is reading. And so whenever he's reading the book and like imagining what's happening in the book, we're on film.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to delineate it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
in, I've seen two of your movies, Badland and Lost on a Mountain,
Hmm.
and the trailer, the sizzle trailer of a movie that I couldn't find. So gee,
Oh, yes.
that is,
Yeah.
by the way, is gorgeous.
Thank you.
One of the common denominator on those three movies is that they're basically exterior, the entire
Hmm.
movies.
Hmm.
And you, in my opinion, you show a great control on the exterior because faces are shaped and there's not light all over the place.
Hmm.
How you get to be a master on that?
That's a great question, and thank you. It's something I really enjoy. It's both stressful because there's a certain level of having no control, and at the same time, like wanting to control it. Um, I spend a lot of time outdoors. It's a hobby of mine. I do a lot of camping and backpacking, and that was sort of as someone who grew up in New York City. Uh, I didn't get a lot of that uh, uh, in New York, and so when I would visit my family in Belgium or Israel, they would take me out into the wilderness, and so I always kind of became an enthusiast in that regard. And um, once I got into filmmaking and cinematography, I found myself just observing natural light and understanding how it interacts with things, um, and then watching the other masters in our craft who really excel at that. And it became really apparent that you need to early on in the process effectively communicate and get the director and the AD and the producer are all on the same page with you about scheduling for the light. And it's a hard thing to do because there's some directors who just don't want to relinquish the idea of shooting sequentially or breaking up a scene. Um, but to really take advantage of natural light and, you know, be flexible in the moment and make use of without having a ton of gear, because that's the other thing is the movies I've done where we were shooting day exterior, we're also often shooting in pretty remote places. And, we would have support gear, but, we're not bringing like a 10-ton trailer into the wilderness. We're bringing like what you can fit on a four-wheeler and a pickup truck. And so the big thing is just getting everyone on board with this idea that, okay, in the morning, we're going to shoot the east facing coverage. And then we're going to find a cover set. And so for Suyi, that was actually really effective because we'd shoot a scene, all the stuff facing east. Then once the sun got too high, we'd go into the teepee and we'd film in the teepee because there was a cover set and there's just like a little slit in the ceiling for a beam of light to come down. And then you add the smoke from the fire and it was just stunning. And then once the sun got low enough again in the west, we would step outside and complete the scene from that morning facing the other direction. So a big part of it is trying to keep the cast in backlight as much as possible, and just kind of making use of an effective schedule. I've done a lot of sort of dusk sequences, and that's a similar thing where you're just parsing out shots over a few days, and just completing your day with a dusk shot or two. And then the next day, you get another couple for the sequence. So that's really from a practical standpoint, that's sort of my approach. And I don't like to bring lights outside. I think it slows you down, so you can't be reactive to what you're seeing, and it's a logistical nightmare. And so we'll have bounces. I use a lot of muslin, and I'll skin like an ultra bounce with muslin on it, so that I can quickly alternate between having that bounce or flipping it around, and having some negative. And so yeah, that's kind of. I don't do a lot of overheads, and I don't know if that's just like a habit, like something from I just picked up over the years. But when I first started in film school lighting day exterior, they always told you like, oh, skin a 12 by and put it over the actor, like put diffusion over them. And I remember just always being really disappointed with the results. And so I haven't really tried doing it again, unless there's a certain effect you're going for. On Suyi, we used a quarter grid and we skinned it, but it's because we had shot a lot of the scene in like a wispy, thin kind of cloud coverage. And so when we went in for the close-ups, the sun had come out because it's Montana and the winds are crazy, and you get a lot of like varying changes in the light there. And so we used that. But traditionally I try to just kind of work with the sun and sort of follow it through the day.
Nice. Yeah, there's nothing worse, I think, than like you're shooting a brutal story or somewhere you're supposed to feel raw and rugged and lost, and it's just soft, perfect.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
takes you out of it in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Like you want to feel that raw roughness.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the color mixing as well. I sometimes I work on commercials, and like I have to recalibrate my brain for the day exterior of a commercial versus that of a feature, because my instinct is to try and use like natural bounce sources if I'm making a movie, and so that'll include having like a color cast to the bounce light, versus in a commercial environment they pulling out like the bleached muzz and everything needs to be like perfect and clean. And I'll always take like an unbleached muslin, and if the if the older the rag is, the better. If it's covered in like shit and dirt and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
that's
I
my
agree.
preference. Yeah.
Nice. So I mean, yeah, like you said, the beauty work became kind of a staple. I mean, to this day, I think, right? Like you still do a
Hmm.
lot of beauty work.
Yeah, yeah. I'll
How
pick them up every so often.
that's got to be so tough going from a mountain in Maine to like we're handheld following this kid through the woods to then. But is it, or it might be refreshing? I don't know. It's kind of
I
nice
think
to
it's
switch it up.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing. It just sort of I like a challenge, and I like changing it up. I definitely think that while I have like my sense of taste and aesthetics that I like, I try to be a chameleon. I try to fit and mold myself to what the needs of the project are. And beauty lighting, there is a technicality to it. There's not a rule book, but there's a technicality to it that is really fun. And you can get into the weeds a little bit with the lighting for beauty because you're sitting there shooting like an extreme close up of someone's skin and you want like this like special glimmer and you want to and it can be really devoid of emotion if you're kind of following a script that you always use. Like there's some people who are just like, and I pull out the breezy and I point the breezy and I move on. Um, and for some things that works really well, but sometimes it lacks like a depth to the light. And so, every once in a while we'll do a job, and we're, especially with this one director, Jean-Claude Thibault. He used to be a cinematographer. He had done like additional photography for the first Minority Report, but he's gone on to be like a very accomplished beauty director. And but he always challenges me to like try and make the light something more animated, something more alive. And so, I remember once we set up for a close up a giant custom made umbrella of muslin. So it was like a 10-foot diameter breezy, but made out of like PVC pipe and stretched muslin.
Nice.
Um, and then we had outside, and then the camera was through it, and outside of it was a 180 degree of track with a light on it, and the light was just panning and being like rotated around the umbrella. And so, but once you look at the image, all you really see is like a beautifully lit woman, and then there's just like the slightest like movement in the like specular highlights.
Because that light is so diffused working
It's so
around.
diffused and it's moving around through it. So like there's things like that that are really fun about the beauty space if you can get into the weeds a bit about it.
Yeah.
And then also on the commercial side, like beauty is a breath of fresh air because they like contrast, and they like more cinematic frames. It doesn't have to feel sort of poppy and bright and flat.
So
Yeah.
who's the true what's true to you as a cinematographer? The movie side, the commercial side, or the music video side? Who's the real Idan?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the movie side is the really done. That's my passion. And that aesthetic is also more where I lean. I really uh, I like dramas that are told on like epic scales. So I think I tend to lean towards really loving movies that showcase like a specific moment in time or even several years, but a character drama told on an epic scale. I like this year, for example, I saw The Brutalist and I was just blown away. It's like the perfect example of the kind of movie I would like to make in the future. And that's the tree down. That's the down that likes high contrast and like raw lighting and sort of emotional gut based filmmaking.
Cool.
Still very constructed, it, which is a thing that I really like about the filmmaking process is the mise en scène and the construction of things. But there's a fine line that movies like that um, walk where they're intentional, there's design, but it feels like flawlessly human and free.
It,
Nice. That. Go
so
ahead. Al.
so yeah. Well, so when you when you sit with a director for the first time, uh,
Mhm.
and you listen to his ideas on the movie and what he wants to achieve and stuff like that, do you? I know it's different. It's difficult to say, but um, do you have your? That what you describe right now. This is what I like to do. Do you adapt that to the movie, or do you go with a clean slate, clean brain, and go, okay, tell me what you want, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think that I definitely like to allow the director to steer the conversation because I think that they've lived with the project longer, much longer than I have.
Mm.
And so my sort of initial instinct is to give them the benefit of the doubt that they've really thought this through. They have really really taken the time to figure out what's best for the project, and I shouldn't necessarily impose like a one size fits all approach to my work. So I like to let them steer, and then just using sort of my taste and my instincts, inject what I have to offer to that process. Um, and I think when I was younger, I definitely had the headspace of, well, I'll change myself to fit whatever mold the movie needs. And perhaps that was partially just like driven by the desperate desire to book a job. And while I think there's still a desperate desire to book a job because like the film industry is brutal, I've learned to also be perhaps more selective about what project I take moving forward so that I can allow the director to steer and guide me, but we're also aligned from the get-go. And I'm not trying to change myself completely for them. And I think that's like the direction I'd like to head in is just finding collaborators that I align with visually, and then letting them kind of challenge me and push me further.
Nice.
Mm,
Yeah.
nice. So, as you stated earlier, you're kind of drawn to these more kind of raw, brutal, humanistic stories told on an epic scale. Uh, are there in your prep process? Are there references that you like constantly go back to that you're like, hey, this is a core part of my aesthetic and things that I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think there's a few cinematographers that I reference often. I really adore the work of Hoyte van Hoytema and Roger Deakins. Those are Ed Lockman is another one where his work keeps like popping up in my decks.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I think like the last three movies that I've made decks for all had some clips from Silence as well. So Rodrigo Prieto is another
Mm,
really like huge influence. He actually introduced me to like my favorite photographer as well. And so that's an example of like images that are like seared into my brain and constantly come up in my references, which is Sebastião Salgado.
Yes,
Um,
Brazilian
yeah,
photographer. Yeah.
yeah, Brazilian photographer. So I once attended a workshop where Prieto was talking about his process, and he kept pulling up these pictures of Salgado's work, and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?"
Which are
And
black and
so,
white,
yeah,
most of
all
them.
black and
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which is it's definitely like an interesting challenge to explain to a filmmaker who's maybe a little more literal why I'm sending them black and white references, but I'm not asking us to shoot the movie in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I'd say Salgado's work ends up in like every every deck at some point because he was journalistic in his approach. I mean, he literally would just go to some of the most depraved, horrible sort of places on the planet in the sense that like he photographed the burning oil fields in Iraq. You
mm,
know, he's been to like lithium and cobalt mines, and he showcases there's the beauty of these just desperate and awful conditions that some human beings live in. He
Yeah.
also does incredible like anthropologic stuff too. But I was introduced to him seeing sort of his photos of famine and war and these really dire places. But they have his eye for light is sort of what always drew me to that work. Um, and it's all natural light. He's not walking around with a lighting kit for his photos. So
Yes, he's got a book called Workers
yeah,
that should be shown in every high school in around the world. I mean, it's
yeah,
really, really, really impressive. It's
yeah,
heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time, which is really
mhm,
amazing.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I have a
Those are the
bunch of
best
his books
stories.
back here.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, there's Workers actually right there. Right
yeah.
there's Workers. Yeah, I adore his work. I have his books there. What is it? Steve McCurry. I have a lot of journalistic photographers, and then I guess maybe perhaps like alluding to the beauty work that I've done. I have some like Irving Penn or Lillian Bosman, um, who are more sort of the editorial style, but
But
still masters of
having
light.
having still photographers uh, as reference, it completely makes sense. What you just said about you want to go outside and shoot with no lights and available light and shape it and stuff like that. That's what they do. So
Hmm.
that makes
Yeah,
completely
exactly.
sense.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's where my inspiration has always come, and I think it's good to challenge ourselves to find references outside of other movies as well. Um, I think it's really good for our brain and our soul.
Couldn't
Yeah,
And
agree more.
are you a tech freak? Are you super into technology, or or you don't care that much about it?
I I definitely can be. It's like a switch that can get turned on. I have a big tech side, and when I was starting out, it was the main focus of everything for me was oh, how do these cameras work? What happens when light hits a sensor? Like getting into the weeds of all the technology and understanding, especially because I started in lighting and understanding like lighting systems and gear and all that. I have that tech background and I am an enthusiast, but the second half of my career was recognizing that I had to stop caring as much about it. I don't know. Some people have like magnificent brains and they can store everything. But I often think of my brain as like a house, and you're just like shoving boxes into closets, and there's just only so much real estate for things. And so every so often I have to like throw things away to make space for new ideas. And halfway through my career, I definitely recognized that if I wanted to grow as an artist and a storyteller, I had to start clearing space of the tech and relegating that to my crew and support positions so that they can, and trusting them to handle that side so that I could fill that vacated space with a better understanding of how stories are effectively communicated, how emotions are effectively communicated, the more sort of cerebral film studies side of filmmaking. Um, but I definitely I'll have like moments where I can get super techie. My pandemic hobby was I taught myself how to build computers. You know,
Wow.
so I yeah, so
Some
I had a lot
people
of free
bake,
time.
you build computers.
Yeah, it's the same
I
as
I did
sourdough. Come
bake.
on.
Yeah, I did bake. I did learn how to bake, and then I got tired of waking up at 4 in the morning every day for a few weeks, and so I started looking at YouTube videos on how to build computers.
Cool.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. Which then, yeah, filters into the once the filmmaking starts back up.
yeah,
It's something we talk about a lot is like you mentioned the crew and relegating and kind of managing that and surrounding yourself with a good crew. That how have you kind of stuck with some of the same people all along that you try to bring them along? How was that transition? It's kind of weird question to answer, but just from my perspective, stepping from positions of again low budget music videos to a position of higher management authority was probably the
hmm
biggest jump in like stretch like thrown into the fire. How did you deal with that? How has that evolved?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is a hard question. I definitely, there are several people who have maintained like a long-standing work relationship over the years, and we continue to work together. Um, and then there's many people who I worked very, very exclusively with for a long period of time, and then we kind of grew apart. Uh, I think it's important to find collaborators, specifically crew, ACs and gaffer and key grip and all this that you can rely on and trust. Um, but there was a period just before the pandemic where um, it was very busy. And even actually after when we got back to work in like 21, 22, everyone talks about sort of the big boom in
Mm-hmm.
production at that time before it all collapsed. And um, I had this feeling both times of, okay, I have my crew that I really, really rely on, but I should probably become comfortable working with new people so that I don't become so reliant that I'll flail if I don't have my people. So I started trying to balance it out. And through that, I also challenged myself to reach out to people who inspired me, who were just like honestly just like way older than me, and try and work with support crew who have like 20 years on me in their careers, and through that process, um, I became a better communicator, a more effective communicator, because I didn't just like rely on a shorthand that I had with my core crew. Um, and I learned so much from these people who have been making movies since I started watching movies. So I definitely advocate for people to like, it's a shitty metaphor, but like date around.
Mm.
Um, but it's not to say that you're not dating around because you're looking to replace your people. Those I still have the same first AC that I had on, my second feature. I still work with the gaffer I worked with on my first feature. He's not doing every single project that I do back to back, but I always come back to him because we're great friends. We have a good working relationship, but it has empowered me to be able to, for example, Lost on a Mountain, Maine. I went to New York, upstate New York, to shoot that, and they really wanted us to keep the crew as close to upstate New York as possible, and so we brought in a lot of people from the area and a lot of locals. And so, had I not taken the time to learn how to communicate with new people, I would have really struggled in that space. And through that process, I met really great technicians that I have called again when I'm out there. So, yeah.
What about cameras and lenses? Are you kind of loyal to one camera or one set of lenses, or you choose by project, or how you do it?
I try to be open to any system, any camera system or any lens, because I do subscribe to the belief that all that stuff is sort of secondary to the actual work we do, the craft. Especially because I came up in lighting, I do find myself always trying to encourage people to realize that like the difference between lens A and lens B isn't the difference between like someone crying in your movie. That's going to come from the actors, the script, the production design, the costumes, the lighting. Um, but I do have preferences for sure. I work with Arri cameras a lot, especially for features. I find that their camera to be just like so reliable and easy to use that in the indie filmmaking space, especially where I don't have the bandwidth to dig through menus, or it's just like it's streamlined, and it's a solid tank of a camera that just works.
Mm.
um, so like and obviously the images are beautiful too, but I shoot with the Sony Venice a lot. in music video spaces and commercial spaces. Even the V Raptor I find to be really effective. And then I also love shooting film. So I try to just approach every project from the perspective of the camera choice is a logistical choice. It's not going to really change the aesthetic dramatically. And as long as you have a good colorist and a good eye, you can steer any of the cameras I've mentioned into the right place. Optically, I'm a little bit more married, in the sense that I've been with Panavision for like 12 years. I've just been working with them consistently, and they've supported me throughout my career when I, absolutely could not afford it. They were always there for me, and so I really like the optics there as well. So it's a little bit of loyalty, and also the fact that they have the tools to back up that loyalty. But I'm agnostic in terms of the conversation of spherical versus anamorphic. I think both formats are really wonderful, and it's really just what's the right choice for the story you're telling.
And Panavision is very well known for the anamorphics, but the spherics of Panavisions are fucking great. To be
They're
honest,
incredible.
it's
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah.
it's so good because even from before digital, they thought of lenses, you know, more in an artistic way and less in like an engineering sense. The engineers there, they always came at it from the point of like, it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to, help you tell a story. So how can we, make this tool of art, not this tool of image capture, which I think some companies can sometimes lean a little too much towards. Well, this is optically perfect. Why don't you like it? All the charts look perfect, you know. Yeah, I adore Panavision lenses, and they're continuing to make more and more, and the infinite iterations and tweaking that they're willing to do. It's a level of service and opportunity that I don't find many other places.
It's a very long and fascinating conversation with other DPs about why they like some lenses or not others. I mean,
Yeah,
Roger Dickens, he likes the sharpest, the cleanest, and some other DPs don't. So,
yeah,
and the amazing thing is that DPs that like super sharp and clean lenses, and DPs that like the funkiest, weirdest lenses, they
yeah,
all shoot beautiful images. They all shoot
hmm
beautiful
hmm
movies.
yeah,
So it's a combination of so many things, not only the camera and the lenses. That it's
yeah,
as you
yeah,
said before.
absolutely.
It's also the actors. It's the set. It's especially to me. I think it's the light is the key. So
hmm hmm
so yeah.
Yeah, I think that if I had to like break it up in terms of like importance, I think that it's hard to do because everything it's the culmination of everything. But I think that at least for our job, it's like 75% production design, and then uh, 20% lighting and 5% camera. At least it's like strictly speaking, like why does an image look the way it does? And I guess I left out costumes, and my wife would kill me because she's a costume designer, and I
And
didn't do that
makeup
intentionally.
and the
Yeah,
actors.
it all matters. It all
Yeah.
matters. But if I'm talking about like why was that image compelling? Well,
Yeah.
there was a lot of contrast in the frame. There was color in the frame, and like the biggest, in my opinion, contributor to that stuff is not even in our departments. It is costumes and the art department that inform that, and then we accentuate and we bring it out. Uh, I always tell producers like spend more money on your locations so that
Hmm.
we can shoot at the right place and so we can shoot at the right time, and I'll save you thousands of dollars on the lighting budget.
Mhm.
But if you put us,
Absolutely.
you put us in a shit space where I'm working hard to correct the problems with the location, Now we're not using our money wisely.
Yeah,
Um,
or our time.
yeah, yeah,
The,
exactly. And it
a
also
question.
opens up so many opportunities where, like, I think of The Crown. The Crown has incredible sets, and I remember being enamored with how much broadside lighting they did in that show. It's all from camera side. You know, the quick trick that you learn early on in your career is like, well, if I just shoot towards windows, if I just shoot on the shadow side, like the frame becomes more complex, the image has more contrast, it's more interesting. And then you watch a show like The Crown, and um, they're shooting quayside, and it looks phenomenal. And it's because the
Sets.
locations, they have so much to offer there where you can start kind of doing things you wouldn't normally do. It just opens up a world of opportunity from a lighting perspective when you just have like a really strong base.
Eh,
Agreed.
one question that came up in the last episode with Oren, uh, s- and it's what will be if you only have to shoot
Yeah.
with one lens for the rest of your life, just
Hmm.
one, not a full set, just one lens. What that lens will be?
Hmm. It would be the it would be the 35 millimeter P vintage Panavision lens,
Ooh.
Nice, beautiful lens.
which is just a rehoused ultra speed Panavision lens. But that way it's like uniform and, you know, it's like a good shape and balanced and all the mechanics work well. But I would say either that or a rehoused 35 millimeter super speed.
Ah.
Those are, it'd be one of those two, and they're near identical. They're nearly identical. We tested both for Lost on the Mountain.
Yeah,
Um, and they're almost identical. The difference is just like the close focus, where like the super speed gets a little
much
closer. You can
closer.
like walk right up into someone's face. I think it's like 9 inches. Um, yeah, it would be that because it's like two lenses in one. You can be wide open and it's like super funky, and as soon as you go to like a 2.8, it's still a very pleasing lens. It's not hyperclinical, but it kind of cleans up a lot, and you don't have as many like little funky things happening at the edges.
Mm.
But I think it's my favorite perspective spherical 35 millimeter. Um, and it's small, it's compact. Yeah, it would be that one.
Nice. Where do you
Yeah.
find yourself shooting? You know, let's go both spectrums. You're on beauty. Are you a little more stop down? Are you when you shoot in your movies? Are you one of those wide open guys, or are you kind of like I'm gonna play it 2.84 split?
Yeah, yeah. I typically sit at like a 2.8. Yeah, 2.84. Um, that's that. It's like a comfy place for me. You got room to open up if you get in a bind. But you know, as long if you can stick to that number, it's like a reasonable place for an AC to keep the damn frame in focus. You know, you're not putting them through the fire. And it's also I do have a pet peeve with I know right now the shallow focus cinematography is super in, but I'm getting tired of actors only having their eyelashes in focus. I feel like we're losing the we're we're losing the point of making images uh, you know like easy to track. If you're shooting, and I think there's some like logistical issues with like the shallow focus style of today because we're supposed to communicate information. That's part of the job of a cinematographer is like you're telling the story, and if people can't track the action, if I'm supposed to if there's an insert where someone's writing a letter and I'm only getting half the words on the page, like that's 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 a problem. Um, there's times where you can use it really effectively. There's a lot of movies that go super shallow and it's super effective. But it's because it's being done as a choice and not as like a fix for maybe not having the right location or not having the right art department. So yeah, I sit around a 2.8 typically, um, both for beauty and for narrative. I do want to shoot deeper. When I was younger, I shot exteriors at like an 8 because I read on a forum that Roger Deakins shot at an 8, so I did that. Um, and so I'd like to try that again because I heard that Fade and Papa Michael did his last movie. They shot a ton of it at an 8, and I think it's a really the Bob Dylan film. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a really novel idea to break things up, and it is a flex. Like you need to be super confident in your art department that everything is looking great, and the visual contrast in the frame exists without you having to, you know, compress it. Um, but yeah, I like a 2.8, and then on beauty stuff, I end up on zooms a lot.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just because of the director I work with. The French, they love the 11:1 zoom.
Are you like a practical zoom or variable prime just to move quicker?
Um, like a practical zoom. They
Oh,
love
nice.
like, and it's made me more open to incorporating zooms into narrative projects. Zollies are really cool, and I've noticed when I say Zolly, people think of the Hitchcock zoom, and I don't mean that because then I would say Hitchcock zoom. I mean like a camera tracking sideways and zooming in at the same time. It's a really cool effect. Or pushing in and zooming in at the same time, and you get sort of this combined sort of effect.
Hmm.
We did a couple of those on Lost on a Mountain in Maine, where the movie we're in the woods a lot, so the camera package was supposed to be really light. It's like super speeds and a mini and stripped down to the most basic thing possible. But my first would always give me shit because I always said like, don't worry, this movie, it's we're hiking a lot. It's going to be a light package, but it was like a light package plus an 11:1, uh,
Just in case.
just in case, because we would do it once in a while, and it was to great effect. Like there are moments where these characters are stressed and the parents are unsure of what where their son is, and is he dead, is he alive, are they going to find him, it's been 8 days or whatever, and there are these key moments where we're just dollying towards them and zooming at the same time, and it just really kind of gets you into the headspace, I feel, of someone who's like feeling an anxiety, an
Dude,
intense
that
anxiety.
movie was, as a parent, was like super affecting to me. I mean, I ended that film like crying. I'm like, I want
Yeah.
to go pick up my son from school now.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. That's what the director would say constantly throughout prep. He was really really good at reminding everyone. He was a great leader, Andrew Keitlinger, so wonderful director. Um, and he would constantly say like at the end of the day, this movie is about a boy who wants a hug from his dad and a dad learning to say I love you,
Mm.
and that was like the core through line that we were chasing, and he would say that not just to the department heads, but something I give him a lot of credit for is 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week, he would have like during our morning sort of safety meeting, he would just say it again and remind the crew like this is what we're all working towards. And so it fills me with a lot of joy to hear you say like you came out of the movie and you're like, oh, where's my kid,
Yeah.
like let me go hug them. Yeah.
Oh, dude. I mean, it's like I'm getting ready to go on a job in Mexico, and I'm just like, nah, I'm gonna stay here. I'm just gonna sit on the couch with my boy. I'm never working
Yeah.
again. It's like
Yeah.
one of those things.
So, what's your relationship with DI, with the color? Are you a guy who wants to nail it on camera and then do just a light pass on the DI, or do you rely heavily on the color
On
correction?
color. I think I'm somewhere in between, leaning more towards trying to get as much of it done on set. Um, I like a light touch in the color grade. Um, and as far as like I don't like a lot of power windows. I don't like um, injecting a ton of color into shadows that wasn't there already. I like the approach of a color correction system that from maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And that's why the kind of colorist I work with is really important, because I want them to also kind of subscribe to this ideology of, when we absolutely need to, we have the tools to correct for problems that may have occurred that were out of our control, or, I think I just lost my headset. Can you hear me still?
I
Yeah.
got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So correct for problems that we couldn't avoid on set, or accentuate just a little bit. Okay, well, maybe just get a little bit on the face here. Just like give me like 1/3 of a stop more, which is also why I try to talk printer lights with the colorists who understand that. And so my favorite colorist to work with is Walter Volpato. He did Lost on a Mountain in Maine.
Very good.
Him and Nick Metcalf, they work together on that. And yeah, like that's the kind of sort of methodology that they both subscribe to, which is a lighter touch. It's more corrective from like a balancing standpoint. It's about setting the tone of a scene, and less about getting in there and like going ham with windows and vignetting and carving out. Okay, now we're going to take down the sky. Like I'm also just. I think it just comes from a taste perspective where I also really don't. I like when highlights are really bright. If and so I do struggle in the music video and commercial space where I get into a grade, and I think the colorists operate from like, well, the client always asked for this, so I'm just going to do it anyway. And I always have to tell them, let's make it a little brighter. It's okay. It was bright. I know it came in and the highlights were kind of close to clipping. Like, it's okay. Like, it should feel intense, and there should be a wide range of values in the frame, and the black should be black. And, I definitely, and I think that comes from loving the look of a print stock. And so working with like Nick and Walter was so good because they subscribe to that ideology. They like those looks. And we worked before the production to set sort of a LUT that we felt worked for the film, and then kind of stuck with the plan. And when we did corrections that were more aggressive, it was because, yeah, like it's an indie movie. I'm shooting out of a cave at a bright, extreme, sunny, exterior, and there's just one patch of sunlight that breaks through the trees and is nuclear. And it was 1 p.m. There was nothing to be done about it. So I knew I had it in the file, so we can bring it down in post. We'll select that area and deal with it independently. But I don't like to go in there and get crazy. Like, it's impressive what can be done. Like, I sat down and watched Lubeski explain The Revenant, in person with his colorist on their screen, and they were showing all the different windows and rotoscoping and stuff. That's incredible. That's impressive. I think I'd lose my mind if I did 15 weeks in a color grade.
Yeah, 15 weeks in a grade. I mean, the stuff that can be done if you have enough time. But that's kind of every aspect of what we do. It's like if you have enough time.
Yeah.
But then part of, I think, something Wanmi and I talk about a lot and with other people is just kind of building the walls to our own little sandbox. It's like there's so much we can do. What are kind of the rules that we're setting for each individual project? There's definitely, I watched On a Mountain in Maine recently. It's like there was definitely some rules that you guys talked to. When we do this, when we see this, we're going to show it this way. Can you go through some of that thought process?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a reflection of what's the environment that Don Fendler, the boy, what is the environment that he's in, and sort of what's happening in his sort of his arc. And we had rules for what the regular world, the civilized, safe sort of world of people and society would feel like. And that always felt very formalist and controlled. And, we were on dollies, and we were, restricted to what that tool can do. It it was, like I said, it's formalist. So very much sort of classical filmmaking approach. Um, there wasn't a ton of just like chaos. Lenses were medium to long. Um, it should feel familiar and warm and inviting because that's home. And then when he's out in the wilderness on his own, after the sequence at the top of the mountain, that's where we introduce wider focal lengths. That's where we introduced a lot of handheld, and just sort of communicating the freeness, but also the unpredictability. Like there's this early on in the movie, his like a kid would do before it sets in how serious his circumstances are. He's kind of having a great time being on his own, not having his parents telling him what to do. He's like in nature, he's fooling around. It hasn't dawned on him that this is like actually dangerous. And so that to me, we decided like all this stuff is going to be handheld for him because that was that feeling of sort of unpredictability. It's playful, but can also be really intense. So that was one of the rules we set for ourselves. There's also the color contrast of warmth for his family and cold for his environment, and that was definitely a monumental effort because it's the outdoors and you don't have a lot of control of that, especially in the summer in New York where it kind of isn't cold. And so there was a lot of scheduling to try and keep our big wides as early in the morning as possible or as late in the afternoon so that we could get sort of that either overcast or like dusky dawny vibe, and tons of smoke, just like tons of just tubes of death through the woods. So just kind of, because even on a sunny day, if it was early enough in the day, you'd fill it up enough that it took the edge off and took it to a colder place. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other like concrete rules we had.
One that comes up is like the slow shutter effect.
Oh yeah,
every once in a while.
Yeah, love that. I wish that we tried to have more in the movie. It just didn't make the cut. But that was definitely that came from the director and I talking about the kind of movie Lost in a Mountain in Maine was and what we wanted people to feel, and he wanted it to be a child friendly drama like the kind of films we grew up watching, and so that technique came out of that. Actually, weirdly enough, I know now as a cinephile that made famous by Wong Kar-wai, but I first saw step printing in Lord of the Rings. And so, there was a lot of this sort of adventure and sort of like filmmaking techniques from the 90s and 2000s that we pulled into the movie, because frankly, we just hadn't seen it in a while in that context of like a kid's movie, effectively, an adventure film. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling and I haven't answered the question.
I'm curious about one shot in the movie.
Yeah.
If it was afterthought in the editing, or it was shot like that. There's
Yeah.
a moment where you guys are tracking the kid and the camera is upside down,
Oh yeah, that
which
was
is
shot in
very
camera.
unusual. That
Yeah.
was shot in camera. It was
That was shot in
purposely
camera upside
shot.
down. Yeah. Yeah, that was Andrew, the director. It was in like when I first interviewed and then got the film, and he sent me his shot list, and it changed a ton as we went through prep. But that was a shot that was in his like very first shot list. He always saw that as like a turning point in the film, and sort of one of the bleakest, like the beginning of sort of the bleakest portion of Don's journey. Yeah, I learned to. This is an example of like learning to trust Andrew's instincts. There were times too where he would like come and just like my handheld would be like too controlled, and he'd come and just like grab my elbows and shake me. and stuff like that. And so, and at first I was like, "What are you fucking doing?" Like.
Yeah.
He's like, make it
But I
crazier.
learned to, yeah, I learned to trust him, and he had such a fun sense of humor about it too.
Mm,
That I started embracing more and more of like he likes the imperfection and the sort of rawness of those sequences in particular.
nice. To,
Yeah.
towards the end too, he's laying on the ground,
Hmm.
and there's a shot of him. What lens is that? It's like a
Oh yeah, that's when he gets in the bed, right? He lays in
e-
his bed in the
No,
woods, and
I think that Alex means one that everything in the background is completely rounded.
completely
yeah,
It's
yeah,
completely
swirly bow.
yeah.
blurred
Yeah,
That
and
yeah,
yeah,
rounded.
he's in
yeah.
his
Where he's
bed.
in his woods.
He
Yes,
he he lays in the bed, and then he sees like his
Yeah.
family, and he's hallucinating.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
was that?
that was definitely in prep talking about how do we kind of communicate starvation and
Hmm.
hallucination. And so there was the like graphicness of setting the bed in the woods and the smoke. There was the color grade and the desire to like, I mentioned earlier, I like really bright highlights. And so that sequence, we really got to like get real intense with it and, straight up blow out the camera when he turns, God, that when the clouds cleared and he turned to camera and like
Hmm.
the whole woods lights up. Um, that sequence, that was our like look approach, but then we were talking about optically what we can do. And just another example of like my love of Panavision over the years, I just discover the most random weird optics that they have in their inventory. And I had done that micro budget. My second film was a micro budget movie, and I had just said, to my contact, Mike Carter and Jesse Zhu, I said like, hey, I'm looking for something that feels like psychedelic or hallucinatory, optically, you know. And I said, oh, I feel like I've seen weird optical effects in movies prior. Like, how did they do it? And they're such great collaborators that they said, oh, well, we've got a ton of these random optics that do weird things. And honestly, there's no telling what condition they are in. You kind of just have to come in and look at them and see if they work for you, and then we can tweak them. Uh, we just can never make them sharper. That's what they said.
Yeah.
They said we'll never be able to make them sharper, but if you want to fuck them up at all, like we can do so. And so I remembered that experience on that film, and so uh, I came back to them and said like, okay, I want to reuse this technique, but I want to take it further. And so what do we got? And so Andrew and I went to Woodland Hills, and they just had like, I don't know, 10 lenses on a cart. We just started looking at them and saying, okay, I like this. I don't like this one. I like this. It's not extreme enough, or it's too extreme. And, and Dan was there, and he'd say like, oh, like this one's really great. You just need to close it down. The things that you like about it are still going to be there, and it's going to clean up a bit and be sharper. Oh, okay, cool. So we just kind of experimented, and we found that lens, and I think it's a 40 millimeter. I think it's a 40 millimeter, because the point, the specifically for that moment, we wanted it to be like the human perspective. We didn't want, because they had like an 85 that we used at one point and a 50, but we wanted to be the human perspective, and we just were just fortunate that there was this insane looking optic. So that's all optic. That's all in the
Wow.
lens,
That's
Same
beautiful.
and
for same.
it's just sitting on a shelf in Panavision, and there's no telling what condition it is now. So now I have to, next time if I ever want to use it, I have to just send them a still frame and be like, I want
Give me
this
this
lens
one.
to look like this.
Yeah. It's same for the when he's having the visions of his family.
Hmm.
It's everything blurred on the sides. Is that
Hmm.
an optical too, or it's a
Yeah,
post production?
optical. Yeah,
What
optical.
lens? Same lens?
Um, uh, Different lens from the same series. Essentially, it's a bunch of the Panavision super and ultra speed lenses that they have messed with over the years. And that's why I say they're never in the same condition from when you last use them, because some other DP has used them and asked for like a little tweak.
Mm,
Um,
Yeah.
so it's like a smorgasbord of random optics that you kind of rifle through and give notes on. But yeah, every time there's any kind of blurred effects or kind of stretching and optical tearing, like it's all in camera stuff. We didn't do any post effects for it. I've never been quite pleased with like the post version of it, because it just doesn't tear the light in the same way.
Yeah.
Sure. And just the way that
Even
the foreground subject interacts with the background and kind of bleeds and
exactly.
bends in. You can't
Like even
recreate that.
yeah, exactly. Even when he's standing in the ferns and he's sort of falling in and out of consciousness just before he sees his bed, we have a POV shot and we're using the 85 um, millimeter portrait. They're called portrait lenses. Um, and we knew that we wanted it to kind of fade in and out from black. So I'm just while the AC is futzing with the focus, I'm just riding the iris open and closed and like to make it feel like he's breathing.
Mm.
Um, and I think that if we had done that in post, it would have been very mechanical. And also, you wouldn't get the optical changes because, like, as I'm dialing through the iris and the
You're
AC is
seeing
focusing
more
it,
and
you're
less.
seeing the depth change. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, that's great.
One of the last questions. Every time we ask every DP here, what's the kind of movies that they are looking forward to shoot in the future? Almost everybody, including myself and Alex, we say a western. But you already shot a western. One of your first movies, it's already a
Yeah.
western. So,
Yeah.
what are you looking forward to shoot in the future in movies?
Movies. It's a great question. I have like I have a dream project that I would love to do that I think is being adapted. So I might have missed the boat on that. In a general sense, sort of what I was saying when we were talking about The Brutalist, like I would dream of a drama, a character drama, but on an epic scale. Like I think Oppenheimer 2 years ago is a great example of like it's a movie about a singular person in the context of a world conflict.
Mm.
Movies like that are really effective to me. Lawrence of Arabia is like a masterpiece and a great example of that. So that would be like a dream project. And then on a very specific level, um, I grew up playing the BioShock games,
Oh, yeah.
and I know that Hollywood's been trying to adapt that franchise for like 20 years, I think, or 10, 15 years, and they've keep hitting uh, uh, barriers to pull it off. And at one time, I think Gore Verbinski was slated to direct, and it kind of fell through because he was adamant that it had to be like an R-rated movie and $200 million. And at the time, Deadpool hadn't come out, so the studio was like, no.
That's
And
kind of what the
then
property deserves, though.
yeah, there's no other way to do it, and it's just like a classic thing of like the studio doesn't understand the thing that they licensed. Um, they just know that it's popular and could make them money. And then Del Toro was brought in to do it, and same problem. He was like, "This is a hard R, guys. Like, can't be done otherwise." And they didn't budge. Um, I think Netflix owns the IP now, and I don't know what they have planned or where they're at in
Mm.
the process. But that would be a dream project because I'm a big enthusiast of period movies and period stories, especially like mid-century stories, and
Mm.
Bioshock is like fantasy sci-fi mid-century.
Yeah, it
Uh,
reminded me it's based off a video game if you
yeah,
haven't seen it or played it, and it's like steampunk, alternate history, kind of throwback sci-fi.
yeah. It's like
It's
imagine it's literally about in post World War II, a guy builds a utopian city under the sea, and it's a place where he can sort of pursue his ideological vision of the world that's driven by science instead of capitalism or communism. He essentially his whole thing was like none of the solutions we have right now actually benefit humanity. I'm going to go somewhere where like science can be uninhibited, and of course he's a human being and fucks it up, and it all just takes a
corruption
turn for it.
ensues.
Yeah, it takes a turn for the worse, and it becomes like a horror survival story in many ways. Um, but the aesthetic is incredible because it's all set under the water, and so the light source that besides the tungsten lamps is sunlight through hundreds and hundreds of feet of water. It's just like from a lighting
Really cool.
perspective, it's
Would be a
incredible.
treat. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a dream to do that project. And you can tell that Verbinski and Del Toro were so enamored with the aesthetic of that film because after they tried to make BioShock and then didn't make BioShock, they went on to make movies that had the same aesthetic. Because Gore Verbinski, after he left the BioShock project, his next movie is Cure for Wellness, which
Yeah.
is
Yep.
visually very similar. And then Del Toro went and made The Shape of Water, which is mid-century, a lot of water, a lot of like that kind of metal, and yeah,
Yeah.
really cool.
Wow.
Cool.
Well, Idan, thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, same. Thank you. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. It's been great to get to know you better,
Hmm. Yeah,
and I hope you come back when you shoot another movie.
yeah. I'd
We
love to
can keep
talk to you
talking.
guys again. Yeah, I'm looking
Cool.
forward to it, and we'll hopefully this year brings a lot of great opportunities for all of us.